Hello, I think we're live.
Did we do it?
I think we did it.
We did it? Are we here?
We almost didn't it.
but we didn't it.
You guys, we didn't it.
Yeah, we're here.
Welcome back to the Nerdvana Live podcast. This is yet another episode. We've had a couple weeks of hiatus. We've changed a couple of things, and as you can tell, it hasn't made us any more capable. But we're doing the best we can here. Special thanks. I think we've got Nolan in the booth, and we've got Joe doing call screening for us. This is a weekly live call-in show. We're streamed via YouTube and Twitch, and you can also download us as a podcast on iTunes and other cool places where you can find audio podcasts.
Which won't work as a live call-in
if you download
it as the podcast.
If you download it as a podcast,
you'll be sorely disappointed if you try to call into the podcast.
If you're watching right now, we are live. We are at Nerdvana. I am Randy Pitchford. I am your host. My co-host is Randy Varnell. So today you are between two Randys. And we are currently broadcasting live from Frisco, Texas, from the at Nerdvana coffee shop and at Nerdvana Food Plus Spirits. If you have not been, if you are in North Dallas somewhere or want to drive here, it's pretty rad. At Nerdvana Food Plus Spirits is a video game themed restaurant and bar which has amazing food.
Yes.
And you can play video games while you're hanging out. You can even see some of the coffee shop behind us where you can play board games and get some of the best locally roasted single source coffee on earth. It's really good stuff. Ironically, I do not drink coffee, nor do I drink alcohol. And behind me is a coffee shop, and in front of me is a bar. And that's the way the world works. But we are live, and we are going to take your calls. If you'd like to talk to us and call in, you can ask us any question you'd like. You can bring up any topic you'd like, and we will do a good job at dodging anything dangerous, but stepping right in some minds, I'm sure. Because this is a live call-in show, that means anything can happen. So hopefully it will. And like the format, we're going to be us for a couple minutes, and then we'll see if we've got anybody that wants to talk to us, and then we'll take a call. Well, we got some callers already calling in, so I think it'll be fine. But if we need to kill time, we've got some other topics we can talk about that might be interesting to you guys. And I think that's it for the intro. I think we should just jump into it.
Let's do it.
Okay, so what were we going to talk about? We're going to talk about a couple of things.
Always talked about, we spend a lot of our weeks talking about story and character development.
That's right.
And those topics, so we can certainly riff on that.
So if you guys don't know, so obviously I'm accountable for all the things that Gearbox does. Randy is on the on a narrative team right now. He's actually producer of the narrative team for an unannounced project. Prior to that, he was creative director of Battleborn. Prior to that, he was design producer of Borderlands 2. Randy's been involved in a lot of projects at Gearbox over the years, and it's always a pleasure to work with Randy. And Randy and I are working together a lot right now because we're both on the narrative team for an upcoming unannounced project that's pretty exciting. And so we've been going through this, and we do table reads with our scripts, and we're going through casting right now.
Yes.
And what are some of the other things that we're maybe we talk about some of the process?
We talk about all of our games. Like I think Battleborn is the safe recent corollary to talk about. We love characters, and we, in fact, the whole premise behind Battleborn is we wanted to kind of leverage on that strength and build a game full of characters.
How many characters can we jam in as player characters in one video game?
Yeah, and we had like 30 player characters there, and I think when you get in the campaign, there were another 20 or 30 NPCs that they interact with in the course of the story. So we spend a lot of our time talking about characters. What makes characters interesting? What makes them unique? How do you make them different from one another?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole slew of topics there. But it's a lot of work and from a lot of people. But, it's like so many things that we start with an idea, which is usually a group of us get at a table. We imagine, what the game or what the story is about. And then you start at the top. Who's your protagonist? Who's your antagonist?
Sometimes you start with random weird ideas, that just kind of stick and get in there.
Well, in fact, in Battleborn, we did this exercise, and we talked about it several times, where we had some of our great concept artists at Gearbox literally draw
so much fun.
hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pictures. There was a time in that project where we had all of those laid out on a table, and I would have people come by and just like, which character leaps out to you?
Yeah.
And it was really cool. There of course, a lot of different opinions. Everybody has a different opinion.
Yeah.
But there were 2 or 3 that started to surface at the top. And in fact, if for any Battleborn fans that are out there, Marquis de Caliber, Phoebe, Orindy,
all
and
of these
Thorn were ones that were in that initial almost unchanged from their initial concept art.
It's
we
so
tweaked
cool
the
when that
style
happens.
a little bit, yeah.
Because it happens in a lot of different directions. Sometimes a character starts with an image.
Yeah.
But sometimes it starts with a premise, like how we want to use the character. Not necessarily, we don't know what the character is yet, what they sound like, what they look like, but we know we need somebody to do this certain function in the story.
Right.
Sometimes we start, like for playables or for gameplay interaction, sometimes we start from a gameplay perspective, like what something needs to take place from the game simulation point of view. Okay, character's going to have to do that job, and then we invent the character to fill that in. And sometimes... one of my favorite places, and this is not always where we start from, but sometimes it influences at some point. My favorite thing is drawing from the real world.
Oh, yeah?
Because there are crazy people in the real world. The real world is filled with unbelievable characters.
Without a doubt.
And when I say unbelievable, I mean that some of these characters that if you took them as is, like I'm talking about real people, if you took them as is and presented them as fiction, we wouldn't buy it because they're just too insane. They're just too out there. They're freaking crazy.
Yeah, What's your favorite example of where we pulled from that? Do you have an anecdote?
Well, let's see. There's a character that's not in a game yet. That is something. Do you know Wade, our general counsel?
Oh yeah, of course.
So there's this guy back from where we grew up. And this guy, his name is, I'll just say it because I have no idea. He's probably not, I'm sure he's not listening and he'd have no idea. This will never get back to him, so why not? His name is Kennison.
Oh.
And he is, this poor dude, he is angry all the time. And he's really belligerent. And he's like, he once got in a fight with the window of a car because he claimed it was looking at him funny, and he punched it and knocked the window out and cut his finger. So he's like, yeah.
Well, I guess he won.
And he has this weird vocal tick where he adds the word woo to everything. Yo, man, what's up, woo? And he just, yo, man, what's going on, woo?
Woo.
And he just does, yeah. And
that's
he's
interesting,
like,
woo.
Yeah, he's just, oh, whoa, whoa, woo. It's just this weird tick where he adds the word woo to, and he just inserts in the middle of sentences, at the end of sentences, and he gets really mad. He cusses a lot. I don't know if I want to. I'll censor myself, but I think we need to work this guy into the. He feels like he should be related to Crazy Earl in some way.
What you want?
Yeah, he's like. We joked. Wade and I were talking about him. We joked maybe he's like. He said like, yeah, man, Crazy Earl's my he's my third brother. I got a quarter sister too, but she got all effed up. Like, what's the third brother? How do you have a third brother? Yeah.
Third brother?
You can have like a half brother.
One. So you're 1/3 brother.
Yeah,
so.
He my 1/3 brother. He my 1/3. Hey, maybe you can take the levels down a little bit. I hear myself popping.
Yeah.
I don't want to blow anybody's ears out. Yeah, but yeah, how do you have a 1/3 brother?
1/3 brother. So a half brother. So it would be like your.
If you have a half brother,
how does it even work?
It's not possible.
No,
but he could throw that in there,
right,
and anybody that picks up on it.
They're all half brothers. That would be like some
if you have
genetic anomaly.
If you have a half brother, you have one parent that's your blood parent, and the other parent that's not.
Right.
Which suggests that to be a half brother, like all mating happens with two people.
Well,
so if you're a third brother, that
maybe
would mean
you're adopted, or
for a third brother to happen, you'd have to have a mating experience that requires 3 people.
Oh,
only one of the three.
We're not there yet.
which is a whole level of science fiction.
Right. Well, I was watching. In fact, I was watching the Expanse on Amazon Prime, and they're in a it was an Expanse, and they actually deal with that. It's set in the future, and there are apparently pools of genetics that come to that, and they were asking complex questions like that, like who were your parents, and it was like which of the 6 you want to pick, and they actually had to get down to like, okay, who is your? They used some term, it was like, who is your gestating mother or something like that to try to figure out what the.
I heard about that. I should check that. Is it any good?
Oh, that show is fantastic. Yeah, it's
awesome.
it's high sci-fi. It takes itself very seriously, but it's really well done. I've enjoyed that a lot.
That's great. There's there's so many great so one of the other things I love is I like the Christopher Guest movies.
Okay, are we going to talk about?
I think I might. Because so Christopher Guest makes these documentaries like Spinal Tap and Best in Show and Waiting for Guffman, and they develop characters for these films, and I really respect that process because they get some really interesting, extreme characters. Some of the characters in Waiting for Guffman are some of my favorite characters of all time. I also like Coen Brothers movies for that purpose. I think The Big Lebowski might be the greatest motion picture ever made.
All right.
It's controversial opinion, but the characters
it's
are
just like your opinion,
exceptional.
man.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And Brant, it's like there's just so many good characters in that film and in all their films, frankly. But there's this documentary that my wife turned me on to recently. Did you watch it?
I have. I
went
home and watched it right when we talked about it.
So
it feels just like one of those Christopher Guest movies.
But it's real. It's called Chicken People.
Right, and it's about people who raise show chickens.
It is, and it's a legitimate documentary about people who raise show chickens.
I now know a lot more about show chickens than I ever thought existed.
And it's real, and all the characters are real, and some of the characters are just amazing. And when they cut away, like it's just there's so much. It's a gold mine of content that I'm gonna farm.
It's like all those. It's interesting because that one is actually a real documentary about real people, and in the first half you're thinking it really is gonna turn into one of those mockumentaries because the personalities are so extreme of these people whose life are caught up in. I've bathed 17 chickens today. I'm like it's the first time I've even contemplated giving a chicken a bath, right?
Yes, and they have all these techniques and chemicals that they, like the right type of hairspray to spray on the chicken feathers to get it the exact right type of sheen, so the judges will approve. Hey, should we? I actually have a caller that wants to talk about characters.
All right,
and we've got another caller that wants to talk about combining stuff. So let's start, and then we'll cut back if we need to. Cool. Let's see if this works. We're gonna get the first caller. Hey, Alex, can you hear me?
Hello. Yeah.
Hey, Alex, you're on the air with Randy and Randy. I think we have technology serving us today.
Yes.
Where are you calling from, Alex?
I'm calling from Maryland.
Awesome. Well, thanks for calling. How's your day going?
It's going great. Nice talking with you both.
Cool. Right on. Well, thanks for calling in. What's on your mind? What do you want to talk about?
I kind of wanted to wonder, like, how you guys would take or deal with the character development from Tales from the Borderlands and, like, compare that with, like, the main series Borderlands. I guess, like, I feel, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in general, or do you want to get specific? I mean, when we worked with the Tales guys, just so you know, we wanted to count that as canonical. So we generally...
Yeah, no.
We generally think that what took place in Tales is canonical. The only places where it's not are wherever it's contradictory to something we either have already established that we care about or something that we feel like we need to do.
And that's kind of few and far between.
It's pretty far.
We've thought a lot about that.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes well, but I think your question's great, and you could apply it almost to any IP, right? What's really awesome and about Borderlands, is we've enough people have enjoyed Borderlands that we were able to partner with people like Telltale to make a tale. So we're invite other people into our franchise to build on the basis. Of course, it had some of our had Zero and had some other Fiona and some other characters in there that were interesting,
Mm-hmm.
and then they built on that. So
Athena. She was used in Tales, I believe.
Yes. Athena's in there quite a bit, and Zero, and then of course Jack in a form. Spoilers makes an appearance. I think Randy's already hit on a lot of it with that, particularly when you're bringing other people to work in on your franchise. We had people in our studio that were involved heavily with Borderlands that did a lot of consulting. I think Anthony Birch did a lot of work with those guys. He was pretty fresh off of Borderlands 2. Multiple of our staff and several producers. I know James Lopez had a lot to do with that, and people here. So we work a lot with them.
We developed, we started with joint brainstorming sessions, and that was a fun process. And then it resulted in them going back into the tank and creating some outlines, and then they'd come and pitch those to us, and we'd have a few notes, and we'd do another brainstorming session, and we did that a few times, and that led to the story development. So anyway, what I'm curious, like what your angle on that is, though. Like what are you curious about? What do you want to know about?
Well, specifically, I played through Tales from the Borderlands like a couple months ago, and like I had not seen any of the gameplay prior to it.
Yeah.
And I just felt myself more attached to the main characters, Reese and Fiona, than I did any of the Vault Hunters in any of the games.
Yeah.
I guess that's like part of like the system of Tales from the Borderlands and Telltale games, and that's like their whole spiel.
It's the power.
But like,
it's the power.
How would you guys like?
Yeah, it's the power of storytelling. It's one of the reasons why I wanted that project to happen. Why I endorsed it and enabled it and approved of it and participated in it, is because when we launched the Borderlands games and achieved the success we did with the games, obviously I'm very proud of that. But I wanted to discover how much of that success is due to the game mechanics of looting and leveling up and the moment-to-moment fun of the shooting gameplay, the way we simulated it, and what beyond that did we actually have? Did we have a universe that can support meaningful, engaging storytelling? And that was a really important question for me to answer in order to assess to what extent we had a viable franchise that could cross media. And the Tales project absolutely affirmed that. Because I was able to get engaged with the storytelling in a game that had no shooting, had no looting, had no leveling up, I was confident that the universe could support that kind of entertainment. And that led to things like the movie deal we did. There's a movie in development for Borderlands. There's not going to be any gameplay in the movie at all. Less gameplay than what's in Tales when you watch the movie. But I'm confident it's going to be great as a result of the step that was taken, and we all proved together between Tales, great work on Tales from the Borderlands, and Gearbox's collaboration with them. I'll tell you, it also what you said about how you're more engaged with the main player characters in Tales than you are with the player characters in Borderlands, that betrays why we made the decision in Borderlands 2 to bring back the player characters from Borderlands 1, not as player characters, but as NPCs. Because as NPCs, they could contribute more to the story. And I bet that players became more attached to characters like Roland and Lilith and Brick and Mordecai through the experience we had with them in Borderlands 2 than the experience we had being them, playing as them in Borderlands 1. And I think that also contributes to the power of storytelling as a medium for engagement.
Yeah, I know one of the things we talk a lot about in kind of narrative design is, how much do we tell the story of the main players in a game like Borderlands? Borderlands 1, we were very much, they're an empty shell, make them whatever you want. And it wasn't until they were NPCs with speaking lines and plot points and all that in Borderlands 2 that you really fleshed out that personality. And as we moved on, like Borderlands 2 did a little bit, and then PreSequel went even further, where we're giving a little bit more of the personality to those characters as they come out. They have speaking lines. They'll interact with the NPCs. They'll say something so you have a little bit more sense of their identities. But that's always something we've kind of debated internally, right? Because you don't want to take away that ownership from the player. It's an RPG. You want to feel that.
It is a trade-off. When we made the decision to have a very specific look and style to the player characters and name them, we're kind of committing the player to becoming a role instead of the player defining a role. That said, when we characterized the player characters from BL1 as NPCs in BL2, we had to develop those characters much more than we ever imagined in Borderlands 1. And some players did not like the direction we took them in. Like, some players objected to the idea that Mordecai was a drunk, basically, and other ideas like that, because they had spent so much time playing as Mordecai when he was more of a shell of a character, and they imbibed their own values onto that character as themselves.
Spent basically hundreds of hours with that character. Yeah. It feels like a bit of me,
Yes,
I decided, what he shot, what gun he had. I decided what he looked like. I decided where he went, and when you suddenly, take that, change that on the player, that's a little bit different. Other games, RPGs, struggle with the same type of thing, but take a much more heavy-handed approach. Like, you play Witcher 3, you're going to play that in first person. But, Geralt of Rivia is a character. He says lines, and it switches the cutscenes where you see him, third. Incidentally, there are a lot of MMOs that have found that, like, that halfway. Like, I think about the Star Wars MMO that came out a few years ago from the guys down at a BioWare. And they would do a lot of things where when it would do a cutscene, they would still do the storytelling aspect. They would switch to a third-person cutscene where you would see your character and whatever you were wearing and all of that. And you could choose from some dialogue, kind of that classic BioWare, option. So, there's been some people who have tried some different takes on that. But, I think we're still playing with it. We're still looking for ways to walk that line.
As a designer, though, I can have fun at any point in the spectrum. Like when I was working in the Half-Life universe, it was really fun to think about character development with a character that was a total shell, right? The player character in Half-Life and in Opposing Force and in Blue Shift not so much, more so in Half-Life and Half-Life Opposing Force. The character never spoke. Mm-hmm. Aside from seeing the picture of the character on the cover of the box, you never saw the character in game.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
The only clues you can have about the personality and identity of the character is how the other characters in the game, all the NPCs, reacted to you and interacted with you in first person. And these were games made in 98, 99, in 2000. So that interaction was very light. And yet, in that era, you will have players that will tell you that Gordon Freeman is one of the most defined, characters in video games up to that point, or Adrian Shepard in Opposing Force, and that was fun. It's fun to overcome that as a challenge. How do I define a character without the character ever talking, without ever seeing an expression on the character's face, and having 100% of the behavior of that character controlled by the player controls themselves? And you can do the opposite. Like, we can make a movie where the player has no agency and you can define the character in a cutscene, right? And there's a whole spectrum between those 2 points. And it's fun as a designer to kind of decide where are we at and how are we going to succeed given where we've picked our lane. So Borderlands picks its lane as wanting to define the character of the person that you are role-playing as, but still giving you enough agency where all the gameplay simulation is up to you. Yeah. And the place where gameplay simulation conflates with character and personality is where it gets really interesting, right? You could have, for example, let's imagine a fictional Borderlands 2 character that's very conscientious, very empathetic, and you put that player playing that character in a co-op game with a human being behind it that's very competitive and going to be the first to loot all the chests and keep all the stuff for themselves. And there'll be a conflict between the player character's personality coming through in the character's behavior and the way the character is represented by the story inside the game fiction. And to me that's fun. Hey, I have an interesting complication here, Nolan. Your computer logged out and I can't access the dashboard anymore. Can you log us back in? Sorry for the interruption there. Hey, is there anything else before I let you go that you want to talk about?
No, that's it. Thanks for your time.
Hey, man, thanks for calling.
Thank you.
It's a really fun topic. I could actually spend hours on that topic alone.
We do every week.
Thanks for calling, Alex. Hope things are well and hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Cheers.
Absolutely. You too.
So that was fun. That was a good one. I like talking about character. We've got some other guys, but hey, by the way, if you're watching and you want to talk to us, feel free to call in. The number's on the screen. It's we're right now we tend to prefer the phone number calls before the Discord calls. So if you want to get ahead of the queue, use the phone number, and we'll get to you as fast as we can. I'm going to take one more really quick, and then we'll chat for a few minutes. Let's see if we can get Nicholas on the line here. And I clicked it, and it's happening. And Nicholas, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, Nicholas. Thanks for calling. This is Randy, and you're on at Nerdvana Live podcast with Randy and Randy. And thanks for calling.
Hello, Randy and Randy.
Where are you calling from, Nicholas?
Milton, Massachusetts.
Oh, wow. What's the weather like up there? You guys okay?
Thankfully, I didn't get hit pretty hard,
Okay.
but a lot of other places still are lost some power. But
I hear it's pretty gnarly up there. I had a friend that was in New York City that managed to get out before the most recent storm. But man, good luck, and I hope you and yours are safe up there with all the crazy winter weather. What do you want to talk about today, Nicholas?
Thanks. So this might be a little off topic, but for a while
Nothing's
now
off
I had
topic.
an interesting idea.
We'll make the topic.
So yeah, so for a while I had an interesting idea, and I think a lot of fans have probably had the same idea. But what if, like, maybe in the future you guys do end up making a Borderlands 1 remake, but you don't just make Borderlands 1, you add Borderlands 2 and the pre-sequel as one complete game.
Yeah.
Basically, it's like all 16 Vault Hunters could go anywhere in the series. Doesn't matter of like they're going into the Borderlands 2 areas with the Borderlands pre-sequel guys, or vice versa, or just anyone could go anywhere.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that, Randy? Did you hear that?
What was that?
I think I heard every one of our level designers simultaneously having a heart attack. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
I think I heard them all stroking out. But by the way, I love this idea. We've talked about it inside of Gearbox. One of the challenges is the characters all have different capabilities, and the work involved in allowing, for example, Brick to navigate through the environments of Borderlands 2 and the pre-sequel. That's one set of work, and then there's the other set of work of how to deal with Claptrap's height in all three, all the games.
There's a myriad of different technical. I mean, if you
interaction skills.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Character height is certainly a big one. Believe it or not, we kind of change and play with the scale on that every game, and like every time we start a game, we actually start with what's the biggest and what's the smallest, and all of the levels, because once the level's built, man, that thing's kind of baked in, and it's like a brick, it's like height and width and everything, and you have to be sure. In Battleborn, we had the Montana factor. He was you have to eventually you have to draw a line in the sand and say no more than that. But
you know what we really need to do, and this is something I've been campaigning with inside the studio forever, is because there's a version of that's kind of fast to do, but it's really janky. It's not something that I think we could feel good about selling commercially. And if I'm going to put effort in people that want to eat towards an effort, we're going to have to sell it.
I like to eat, by the way.
Yeah.
Eating's good.
So I've got a whole studio of people whose families were responsible for their livelihoods, right? So we've got to make really responsible commercial decisions, which means if we're going to sell something to a customer, we have to feel like it's pretty solid and not janky at all. So the idea that I love, that I think could lead to something like what you're thinking about, is if we can put some energy towards like SDK kind of material that lets put some of the power in users' hands to modify and manipulate the content that exists. And I think with that kind of approach, I think that'd be the more efficient way to get what you're looking for, and a whole lot more. And where what comes out of that effort, the jankiness is sort of accepted, because these they would ultimately be modifications that users make that are not paid for. They'll be free kind of hobby work.
That would be the fastest path to a playable SCAG, without a doubt.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I want that. But I love the idea, and it'd be really fun to have all those characters, because they're not all compatible, right? Like the idea of Aurelia hanging out with the Crimson Raiders just breaks my brain from a fiction point of view.
From a fiction point of view, I mean, it does. And there's between Borderlands 1 and Borderlands 2, there's like a 6-year gap there too. And we kind of age up, or not, change up, Lilith and Brick and Mordecai a little bit there, but there's some others, especially when you get into if you were to go to Tales and characters of pre-sequel is all over the timeline there, depending on whether you're talking about the end caps or the main game itself.
What could you do from Tales, though?
From Tales?
Because technically, Reese and Fiona are not Vault Hunters. Do you just make them Vault Hunters and forget it?
I mean, you know, they've got the on adventure type of thing, but,
sure.
but they didn't get into a vault. I mean,
yeah.
I think a lot of people.
They also don't have action skills.
They don't. I mean, Reese would be what summon Jack or something. You know, yeah. Jack attack. Go for it. Jack comes and tells a joke, and it does damage.
Doppelganger. So, Tim had that though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fun one though. Have you thought about it a lot? Like, where do you think the pitfalls are? Nicholas, you still with us?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the only real issue I think would just be respecing the skill trees, because from Borderlands 2 and Borderlands pre-sequel, there's that one little thing where halfway down the tree, you just use the 1 point instead of adding another 5.
Yeah. There's that.
So I think that's really the only main issue.
Well, that's I guess from an outward facing point of view, that's the only issue. But
that's a substantial amount of work.
That's a big issue. I don't have a clear solution for that.
Skill
again,
tree.
I don't make games, so
It's the other thing too is it'd be interesting to see if you could just put them into the same build. Like, where would the imbalance between characters across games be? Man, Claptrap would ruin everything.
Yeah,
because Claptrap's such a his skills mess with everybody else's skills.
So weird. You know, like Maya. Like if you, for example, here's a good one. If you took Maya into Borderlands 1, like Maya had one of the hardest control abilities of any.
Great,
yeah, you know, she could bubble and lock them in place, and that probably lets you one shot a lot of mini bosses or boss fights. In Borderlands
Imagine
1.
Maya's skill interplaying with Mordecai's Bloodwing.
Oh my gosh, it gets crazy, you know, and doing that. And there's also some subtleties, like, you know, we had the gun specialties in Borderlands 1 that we changed into the kind of the badass system of Borderlands 2. So we'd have to do a lot. There's a lot of work in remapping. There's a lot of little wires that, you know, it's easy to kind of trivialize, but it does represent a lot of effort.
Yeah, I think though, like if you're talking about just the characters and their skills, we can kind of ignore things like weapon proficiency versus badass ranks.
Right.
And then like the evolution of that ended up in pre-sequel.
There's some technical things and like how the skeletons of the characters are implemented. I mean, we get really, you know, nerdy developer talk if we want to, you know.
You'll have the thing is, if you merge them all into one game, so it's one contiguous.
Yeah.
Then you will have to deal with things like badass ranks and proficiencies, and you're gonna have some Borderlands 1 players that are gonna be mad and want to burn the earth down because you've removed proficiencies, and then you're gonna have some others. If you then apply badass ranks to everything, and then if you don't do that, then they're gonna argue you've removed badass ranks.
You have to find kind of the lowest common denominator on all that.
That's gonna piss everybody off.
So it's. We talk about stuff like this all the time because we love it, and we've certainly this is not the first time we've heard this suggestion, but man, I love the SDK idea.
Yeah, that to me is the right answer, because I think we can get some folks that can help us generate that before too long that aren't part. So here's the other thing that I'm gonna say that you'll probably appreciate: the kinds of people, and there's a lot of amazing talent at Gearbox. That talent that could do the work you talk about, I think you and the entire world that loves Borderlands would much rather have them working on something new than just fixing things from the past. I might be wrong there, but that's probably the case. It's probably the case.
I mean, the leap from Borderlands 1 to Borderlands 2, in my opinion, was substantial, and I love both the games. Yeah. But I mean, you know, size and just fluidity of the systems. You know, we did some really awesome things with you talk about skill trees. I mean, the skill tree difference. I think we really landed on some things in Borderlands 2 with your ability to choose and the ability really to feel some of those growth points.
Yeah, and I think we've gotten even better at that with pre-sequel. And I think the experience we had on Battleborn leveled us up even farther. I think that, to where my decisions affect this, the pathway, I think I am serving what our customers want from us better by asking the talent that could do that work to invest themselves on new things, on future content, as opposed to rehashing past content. We'll see if I'm right, but that's my hunch.
Yeah, it's yeah. Great question.
Amazing question.
It's stuff that we talk about all the time, and I love that you love our characters, and I love that you love the games, and want that kind of cross-play. That's awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for your call. Anything else you want to talk about before we let you go, Nicholas?
No, that's pretty much it. But if you ever get the chance, or if you ever bring that topic up again, I would love to talk to you about it, because I do have a lot of things that I could probably add to the table.
Give me your best thing right now, really quick. Like, what's the best thought that you think might add to the table of that? Something tangible.
Well, if there is one thing that I was thinking of, through all three of the games, we had some pretty amazing vehicles, but in each game we were limited to like 2 or 3 vehicles.
Yeah.
Why not bring all those into the game as well? Use those anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of the things that drive that. Borderlands 2 launched on the same platforms that Borderlands 1 launched on, and Borderlands the pre-sequel launched on those same platforms, the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 and a Windows PC. And the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 did not get any more memory or processing power between the launches of any of those. So our options in those games were to either give you the same vehicles or give you new vehicles
at the expense of.
But we can't give you both because there's not enough memory and there's not enough performance to load all that stuff in. So that we have to make trade-offs. And I wish we had infinite computing potential. And I know that there will be some points in the future where maybe we are less constrained by memory and performance, and we'll have new options as that. As the full manifestation of cloud computing comes to bear for our gaming experiences, but right now you're running the software on a machine that's sitting next to your television, and it has the memory and clock speed and CPU power that it has, and we have to make judicious decisions about how to take advantage of that hardware.
Yeah.
And PCs to some extent have a little more flexibility, and PCs kind of evolve in a more fluid rate. But at the time we launch, it's the same constraint, right? We have to worry about what user we're targeting, and we have to make sure that the game functions on that PC.
Well, it's funny how that affects all of the game. In fact, just last week we were discussing that in relative to story.
Yeah.
We were reading through some story elements and had to we might have too many characters in this scene because of memory considerations back in the map. So it affects every game aspect, not just the gameplay and not just those elements, but it's something that it's one of those bits of responsibility as a developer. We have to have everybody in every department think about all the time memory performance, because it's an action game and it needs to perform as an action game and needs to do that, but it also has to be able to load at some point.
It has to run,
run.
It is exciting though. We do get new console hardware from time to time, and of course today we have the Xbox One and we have the PlayStation 4, and these are much more powerful systems than the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. And so conceivably, with games that go into the new generation, you can see a lot more fidelity in the environment and a lot more options with things like the number of vehicles and the kinds of vehicles and the customizability of them. These are all options game developers can choose between when deciding how to divide up the memory and performance they have to spend on the simulation. And I love the way the trend is going, where the first parties making the video game consoles are not doing the sort of revolutionary kind of jerk anymore with new generations of hardware. They're iterating now. So I think this is going to make it a console more like a PC, in the sense that we can expect every year or two for there to be a more powerful version that basically is the same platform, and our games can continue to sort of evolve on that line without having to sacrifice the experience on other platforms.
Add 2 more enemies to that combat.
That's right. And it could be a more fluid and gradual kind of kind of thing, and I like that. I think that
that's really cool.
When you think of a game like Borderlands, where we built so much technology and so much stuff on a set of tools and foundational scaffolding that was designed specifically for Windows 7, Xbox 360, and PlayStation 3, and we now have things that are much beyond that. It takes a lot of time to build new scaffolding. To be in a world where once that next set of tools and scaffolding is all done and behind us, we can just iterate.
Yeah, I think
that's
the future.
I
think the future's really bright.
From a content and design point of view, that's really exciting for me. So, and I think it's going to be great for gamers. But it's really the balance between technical constraints and the dreams that we all have as game players that you find those kinds of decisions. I wish we did not have those constraints, Nicholas, because I promise you, if we didn't, there'd be a lot more vehicles, and you'd have any of them at all the time you want.
I can promise you that there's not a single developer who hasn't wept over having to cut something that they were very passionate about. we have to kill our babies all the time as we're building the game.
Sometimes cleverness can get us there, though. I mean, one of the biggest innovations that Borderlands brought was the procedural weapon generation system.
Oh, man. Yeah.
And if you can rewind the clock in history before Borderlands existed in the world, the rule with a first-person shooter was you basically got 10 or 12 weapons.
Yep.
It started with 10 because keyboards go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And those are the ones you can switch between.
Yeah,
right.
But then with consoles and different selection options, we were able to get a few more and squeeze the memory to do it. Borderlands, I remember when we were sitting down thinking about like what kind of shotgun should we have, and that debate used to be significant when you're making a first-person shooter. Is it more like the Doom 2 shotgun? Is it more like the Half-Life shotgun?
Side by side? Is it over-under? Is it automatic?
Like how wide is the spread, or narrow is the spread versus the range? How much punch and pushback does it have? What's the rate, what's the cycle rate on that guy? Like all of those decisions are really, they used to be some of the most important decisions first-person shooter developers made. And we're sitting there, and I said, well, why can't we have all the shotguns? like let's have the one with the widest possible spread and the shortest possible range, and the narrowest possible spread and the longest range, and everything in between, and all those are variables, so you can get long range and widespread, and you can get everything. And it's like, well, there's no way to do that. Oh, really? So that desire to want to find a way is what led to the procedural system that we developed software that made guns for us. And that's one of the beauties of Borderlands. And now there's a lot of first-person shooters that have followed that have figured out how to do some procedural weapon generation, or they've brute forced it. Destiny's done a little bit of both. They brute forced a lot of that, haven't they? It's really interesting. So I mean, just because one person figures it out doesn't mean everybody automatically gets it. There is software, there is technology in the invention of procedural weapon generation that we've made. Maybe we'll crack that nut for vehicles at some point. There was a game that tried it. I don't know if you played a game called Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts.
Yeah.
Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts tried to put customizable, arbitrarily configured vehicles into the hands of players as almost like an SDK inside the gameplay itself. Do you remember that? It was a disaster. It was a mess. I had so much fun with it, but I think it confused a lot of players and just didn't work very well from in a market point of view. I thought that game was amazing. I loved it, but I could see why it didn't work from a market point of view.
Yeah, you get especially, man, when you start talking vehicles or like character abilities or whatever, you really get to the ability that you can make a player their own worst enemy really quick, because they can break the game in so many unexpected ways. Yeah. It's like we get asked all the time, why don't you put more flying vehicles in Borderlands? And again, I think I've just heard the screams of 1,000 level designers. You build your level differently if you're building like just a character game or a character in a vehicle game or a flying vehicle game. Yep. And you have to do so much more with what you put in the
well, you have to make trade-offs, right? Like
exactly right.
There's a trade-off between the fidelity right in front of you on the ground and things that you don't have to bother assembling and take up memory with if you never can see or interact with the environment from a different perspective. But if you can interact with the environment from all perspectives, well, then you have to account for all that content, and you have to make those trade-offs. There's only so much memory available. There's only so much performance power available. So every game makes its own trade-offs. And once you've made the decisions about what trade-offs you're going to make, to retroactively go in and say, oh, let's make a whole bunch of different decisions.
Right.
Whoa.
I remember when, remember the time that Blizzard with World of Warcraft added the flying mounts back to the main zones.
And it took, to justify that, it took
an expansion called Cataclysm.
Right. It took an expansion called
dev team felt.
It took an expansion called Cataclysm, but it also took like 10 million gamers around the world paying $14 a month forever.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you add that up. If we were generating $150 million in revenue every month, I think we could spend 50 million of that a month, and probably figure out a way to solve those problems. And it took them a long time.
Yeah, it was like a decade after that.
It took them a long time to solve.
And they had
and it's still janky as hell. And you can break the hell out of the game. So yeah, but I love those that wish and that desire is how the frontier is pushed, and that's what drives us. Thanks, Nicholas.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for calling, man. Call back again sometime.
Bye.
Great talking to you. Cheers.
Yeah, no.
Oh, I didn't mean to cut him off.
Oh, no. Sorry, Nicholas.
We were done. Yeah. Thank you so much for calling, Nicholas. It's so much fun to talk about. Obviously, you sparked something there. Hey, I should take. I'm going to take this call from Rebecca.
Okay. Awesome.
Let's see what Rebecca has to say. Let me hit the talk button, not the drop button. And let's see if this works. Rebecca, are you there?
Yeah, we're here.
Yay, Rebecca, you're live with Randy and Randy. Where are you calling from?
From Illinois.
Wow. I lived in Ohio, which is almost adjacent. I don't know, I lived there for a year, but I don't spend a lot of time in Illinois. I guess I go to Chicago every once in a while. What part of Illinois are you in, Rebecca?
Just north of Chicago.
Nice.
We're in the suburbs.
Okay, cool. Right on. Yeah, I love Chicago. Except I only like it when it's not winter. You guys pulling out of the winter yet up there, or is it still cold and snowy?
We're hibernating. We're not even going outside right now.
Yeah, that's what you have to do. Well, thanks for calling, Rebecca. What's on your mind? What can we talk to you about?
So I just wanted to ask if maybe in a future Borderlands game, if it would be possible to choose your class and then choose your gender. Because I usually solo Axton.
Uh-huh.
But it would be great instead of a dude if I could play a female character.
Yeah.
And also, my daughter, she's 11, and we play together a lot. We actually play war. We go out in the doll headlands and run around and in the runners and blow up the bandit.
That's awesome.
But it's a siren, and sometimes I might want to be a dude siren. So I was just wondering if there would, that option to choose gender after you choose your class.
That's a really interesting question. In Borderlands, we've decided to offer characters, and we have male and female characters you can choose from, but you're choosing to roleplay as those characters. But with that decision, we're connecting the skill of the character, the gameplay of that character to their character and their personality, and that desire to see that disambiguated is real. I'll tell you, there's a prototype of a totally non-Borderlands related game that we've been working on for something completely unannounced, and I'll tell you about a decision that I've sort of put as a stake in the ground on it that I think solves what you're talking about. And what the decision that I'm trying to force us to work through from a prototype point of view is in a character selection situation, you kind of want to pick your character based on their look and their feel and their identity, but you're not really equipped to make any decisions about the gameplay implications of the character because you haven't even started the game yet. So I wanted to disambiguate everything related to gameplay from, if this was a Borderlands game, and it's not, but if it was, the things that would lead to the action skill, for example. Right. But, or, if this was a traditional, say, a fantasy role-playing game, you'd pick I want to look like an orc, but then that necessarily affected like your strength, for example, or other stats. Right. I think those should be completely disambiguated. We want to pick the look and feel and identity of our character as sort of a cosmetic choice at a point where we're actually equipped to make all those decisions, and then let all of the gameplay type decisions sort of unfold from a natural experience of growth and discovery and choice while we're interacting with the game. And this is, by the way, for Randy's reference, this is for the codename Madrone. Yeah. So I don't know if you're aware of that, but that's been a really important decision for me. I think with Borderlands, we're kind of stuck because of the decision we've made to.
We were talking about earlier. Yeah. I mean, our characters. We're going even deeper with the idea that they are characters in the universe.
Yes.
And playable characters in Borderlands 1 became valuable companions in Borderlands 2.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important to our franchise. And I will lore nerd on you just for a second there, because you said, you might want to play a male or female siren. In the Borderlands universe, what we know of the sirens right now is that they are all female.
Yeah. There's something about...
So probably, even if that were ever to exist in a Borderlands game, probably wouldn't have a playable male siren. We'd have to unveil something new there.
Yeah, or they'd have to have, like, if it is gender specific, which so far it has been, that suggests, and if the genders in Borderlands have to do with genetics as we understand it, then there's probably something that sits on that X chromosome.
Right.
That has a little something similar. That allows them to become sirens. So we need to have a male that has like too many X's, I guess, which exists, which is possible.
There'd be something there, right? Yeah. We'd have to. There's a lot of fun lore discussions. We could talk and play about that.
But it's science fiction, so who cares about genetics? We can just make up the rules.
Again, trinary genders.
Yeah, we can just make up the rules to suit the fiction that we want to have.
To kind of your deeper underlying question, though, one of the things I'm so proud about working with Gearbox, and one of the things we really do think about is we want to be sure that our characters appeal to as many people as possible.
Yeah.
So whenever we come to a game and approach a game and think about what are the characters that we're going to put in there, what are we going to play, who's relating to these characters and all of that, we try to be very, very inclusive about everybody. Randy's goal, we get at every company meeting, our goal is to entertain the world. And the world means everybody in all sorts of different shapes and sizes and colors and heights and whatever. And so we think a lot about that and put a lot of thought behind trying to open up characters that anybody could relate to and giving different options. We all relate to different characters in different ways.
And incidentally, in order to succeed at that goal of entertaining the world, like I've taken the position within the studio that we have to be comprised of the world. Yeah. And so Gearbox over time has become more and more diverse with more and more different kinds of people that represent different experiences and backgrounds being part of the development process. So this interest is not unique to just the audience. It's something within the studio as well. What you talk about is discussions that happen within the studio themselves. I think with Borderlands, it would be tricky for us to offer to step away from this idea that we're saying, hey, here's a character. Correct. Choose which character you want to become.
Yeah, that'd be weird.
And it's but I do think that there's some things we can do to give the characters that we offer more options from a skill point of view, so that different character, like the idea of class, can kind of evolve a little bit, right?
Well, we love the idea. I mean, Borderlands is a game about finding your groove, right? And even in Borderlands 2, you really see that with not only with the gun selection, which there are gajillions of guns in Borderlands, with the gear combinations and the skill combinations and all of that. So I think, going deeper there would be something to be very natural to the franchise. But even that, Borderlands 2, you even talk about appearances. While we're a little bit locked on the character, you can do a lot with heads and skins.
Yeah,
we did. I can't remember how many we put out in Borderlands.
The appearance is definitely, and I think you can probably find heads and skins which make your say female characters in Borderlands 2 feel less female, and your male characters in Borderlands 2 feel less male. But and I think that could be pushed even forward. But I also think that the skills themselves, like if you think about, say, Lilith's special ability, her ability in Borderlands 1, she became invisible and she can move through the world swiftly. Which character, and she's a female, which character can do that in Borderlands 2? Zero.
Right.
We just kind of mix up. Now, we had 2 male characters in a row have the ability to do a turret. Now, Axton's turret's a lot more capable and evolved than Roland's turret was. Yeah. If we imagine in some hypothetical future Borderlands game, we might want to try creating some new permutations of some classic kind of skill types, but we also might want to bring some new skills that have never been seen before, and we're going to have to spread them out between different types of characters. And like in the case of Borderlands 2, you had 1 playable female, Maya.
Yes.
You had 2 playable males, Salvador and Axton, and you had whatever the heck Zero is.
Zero.
And
then you have playable Zero.
Zero might be a woman. Zero might be a man. Zero might be an alien that has some different kind of gender that we aren't thinking about.
Robotic favorite fam.
Zero might be a woman.
Is
a
what?
Robot.
What did you say, Rebecca?
Engage, right?
Oh yeah. So then
Gage is cute.
Then we came later with Gage
right.
as the 5th playable character that was a DLC, and then of course Krieg. Right. So that kind of created some more options there. In the pre-sequel, the 4 playables that we launched with. We had 2. We had Nisha and Athena.
Right.
So we had 2 female characters. We had 1 male character, Wilhelm.
Right.
And then we had a robot, Claptrap. And then of course we had other.
Aurelia later.
We had Aurelia, and we had added Timothy, the doppelganger.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we spread it out, and we had different types of skills that we kind of bounced around with those different characters. And I think we should. I think we can keep doing that, but I think that trend, like, it's going to be difficult to just completely interrupt that expectation of offering a character that you become in that franchise. It's not. I think it'd be a surprise and maybe too much whiplash to go full build your own character kind of approach in the franchise. I think that would fight against it a bit, but I don't know.
But I like you talking about the kind of other ways we're exploring that on other projects, in the studio, because it's definitely something that's in our DNA. I mean, Borderlands is so much of its DNA is in that classic kind of RPG type of mode, and that's something that other people have done and gone. And
I have a question. You were talking about Doll Headlands, Rebecca, and does that mean, like, are you still playing Borderlands 1?
Oh yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. The Borderlands games are my top 2 games of all time. I mean, I play lots of other, mostly first-person shooter, other games also, but those are my 2 favorite. And
that's
so
awesome.
Me and my daughter, we like to play Borderlands 1 together, and that's what we always do. We get to the point where we get the Doll Headlands open, and then we jump in the runners and just drive around for hours.
That's so great.
That's
so great. I've got to remember that joy. It's so fun to just get free and to just drive.
Yeah.
And just what's funny is when we were prototyping Borderlands 1 and we were in the very earliest stages, the first thing that we had that I thought was fun was when we finally got runners driving over dunes, and we had AI runners with bandits in them next to us, and we could shoot them with rockets, and just like blowing up an enemy runner and watching the wheels bounce.
You're able to shoot in the middle of a car chase. Yeah,
it was just that was the first time I had fun with our software as we were in prototype, and it's funny that at first we imagined the game a lot more vehicle centric than it ended up being. Vehicles are a lot of fun, but kind of as a distraction. When we got to the point where it was starting to become a racing game or a vehicle customizer game, the vehicle was having more identity than player, and it was starting to kind of fight the fun a bit. So we pulled back from that, and we kind of figured that out.
I think Borderlands 2 had a good mix of that, right? You had some areas and some zones that were very much like, this has been designed with vehicles in mind, and it's great to have a few hours of break. Or if you like that, man, you can spend a lot of time in this area or with that, but the whole game isn't like that. I think think the variety is really good, especially with vehicles and especially with those promises. My favorite story in development from Borderlands 2 comes where Anthony Birch and I were in a room together, and we were playtesting a lot of the game right before release, and we were in the Bandit, the Technical. That's the new one, right?
Yeah.
And he was playing Zero. I was playing, I think, Accent at the time. And I was driving. I got in the car first. We always used to race to see who gets the car first and drive. And I'd won that day. And we got in one of those quests there where we're being chased around, and the 2 or 3 other bandits behind us. And they blew us up, and we go flying in the air. The car parts exploding. And I landed, and then I watched as Anthony as Zero did the most Zero thing ever. He landed, the other car, just bearing down on me, turned around and went invisible, and then did the sword slash, kind of sidestepped the vehicle, hit it at the last minute, blew the car up. Bandits go flying everywhere. It was that moment. I'm like, this game is awesome. That was the best story ever. I wish that we had been frapsing that or anything, kind of video from that. Because it was those things, like, I keep describing it. I even talked about it on the press tour, and I was like, it was so awesome, it was so cool, I can't even describe it. It looked just like a movie. It was the best action scene ever. And it was like, but it was only the two of us. Well, if Anthony Birch is out there and you remember that, buddy, we have that moment. That moment will always be ours. It will live forever in my memory.
I love that. So how long has your daughter been playing Borderlands with you? Hello? Rebecca?
Yeah.
How long has your daughter been playing Borderlands with you?
About maybe 2 years.
2 years. Wow. So she started when she was 9 years old. That's great. I love that.
Yeah, she really started out playing games like Minecraft, and then she would see me playing. She was like, that was like fun. And so we started playing together, and it was really great.
One of the things, the game's M-rated, and a lot of that's because you're shooting guys and taking their stuff, but we're when I think some of the things, like I think moving forward, like I keep putting a lot of pressure on the team, like we should be careful about the subject matter and the content and even the language, and respect the fact that families play Borderlands together, and sometimes you don't want to necessarily. You don't want to overdo it with innuendo, for example, and you don't want to overdo it with language. And so I think you can expect us in the future to be making the game even more family friendly. Well, but not holding back on the wild fun. And we think feedback's great. So I think we'll probably the places I'm pushing for not just work we might be doing in future Borderlands games, but all games, is to kind of go farther with feedback and enjoy the feedback we get from combat, but really care about the story content and the language and the subject matter, so that everyone can feel comfortable playing with their families.
Yeah.
As a mom, I really appreciate that. For her, like when she started, a lot of that went over her head.
Yeah, and that's one of the things too about that kind of content.
If you don't have like subtitles turned on, you can't really understand a lot of the stuff that they're saying. It's great. Like I'm giggling and she's like, what? And I'm like, nothing.
Yeah.
But a lot of it she doesn't really pick up on, which is awesome.
There's a lot of I don't know if you know this, but before I became a game developer, I used to be a magician, and there's a lot of technique in live entertainment with comedy in live entertainment where you can make a joke that adults get on one level and kids get on a different level, and it's okay. Yeah. And it's only when you have wherever you're at with the amount of information you have, it's fine. Right. It's fine. But
also, I have to tell you before I forget. Okay. Crazy Earl is our most favorite character ever. For the longest time, drop-off line, I would drop her off and I would yell at her, see you later. And she would yell at me, don't you hurry back, and people thought we were nuts.
That's so great.
So we love Crazy Earl.
Thank you so much. That Crazy Earl was kind of a last-minute invention. We needed,
He is awesome.
Thank you. I had this mandate. I wanted every function to be attached to a character. So right in the beginning in Borderlands 1, we said, okay, we're going to attach Claptrap to the bounty boards, the job boards. We got Dr. Zed attached to the medicine, the healing, Marcus on gun, right, and so on. And we added that economy for buying the
upgrades,
for buying the SDUs, the upgrades for your storage unit, and that came late in the design, and
as evidenced by the fact that I think Crazy Earl is only a head.
It's only a head model.
I'm not even sure he's a whole head.
This guy, I can't remember which artist. Somebody had a sketch of this guy that was so great. Like, didn't have all his teeth. He was super buck teeth, and he's like just, and look, I lived in West Virginia for a year, so I'm, and I lived in Nashville, Tennessee for a year. So I know characters like that, and
well, I grew up in Arkansas, so
Yeah, exactly, right. So
I do have shoes now.
So when I'm like, okay, we're gonna put this guy. We don't have time to build a whole asset. We're just gonna build the head.
Right.
We're gonna put his eyes only through a slot, so we didn't have to even build the rest of the asset. And I just went in the booth and just belted out some lines for him. And what you want?
It's interesting, to kind of go full circle. It takes. It actually, when you get down to it, it takes surprisingly little to make a character.
Yeah.
You have to find those right magical elements.
It can. You can also spend an absurd amount of time and end up with nothing special.
Yep.
And that happens all the time too, where we spend ridiculous amounts of time in concept and modeling and animation and scripting, and nobody remembers that character. It just doesn't mean anything. And to me, the magic it's about tapping into the weird, kind of special, unique stuff that makes each of us human, and you find the fringes of what's possible with our species, and then you lean into that, and when you can do that, then you can get something special. And Crazy Earl's a great example of that, like really last minute, kind of thrown together in a very short period of time, but and only has probably less than 5 minutes of total speaking time, right? But with that, just tremendous mileage, and I love that, and we got to keep remembering lessons like that so we get more of that. Right on. Hey, Rebecca, go ahead. You were going to say something. Go.
I don't know how much time you guys have. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but Lily would really like to ask Randy a question, if that's okay, if you have time.
We got two Randys. Go ahead. Pick a Randy.
Up and down to me.
Pick a Randy.
Okay. Hold on. Oh, Randy Pitchford.
Okay.
Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Hello. I was wondering, are you guys ever going to make it so you can be more creative when customizing your avatar for the game, maybe?
I think that's a trend, right? If you think about the difference between Borderlands 1 and Borderlands 2 in that regard, you could see that in Borderlands 2 we cared more about that and we put more energy into that. And I think that trend is something that we should respect. So in fact, I don't know if you played Battleborn, but we put a lot, even more energy into that, both from a skins point of view, but then adding this idea of animation and taunts that you can customize so you can affect the behavior of the character in the game, not just the look. And I think that continues. That, incidentally, in the Borderlands universe has to kind of go with the notion of you're playing as a character that we're crafting for you. You're becoming that character. But notice in Heads and Skins, we're okay with kind of breaking the rules of the universe a bit, and we'll go in really wild directions with some of that customization. And I think we should be adding more and more layers of that customization to allow more and more options. One of the nuts we're trying to crack, incidentally, is because we make a lot of first-person games, so and I think this started when we were talking about Battleborn, how do we get customization in the view model of the character?
Right.
And I think we've got some things there. So some future first-person games that you see from Gearbox will have some new options down the road that you'll see as we talk about those future games for that kind of customization too. But that's always exciting to us, and we definitely want to support more and more of that. And that's a great question. And your question actually inspires me to want to push that more.
Yeah. I'm a huge vanity person in any game that I play. I probably spend way too much time collecting apparel items for my characters, and my daughter's sitting in the back nodding. And I really, I'm even... I hate to admit it, I'm even playing PUBG right now in the night, and I go to Steam and routinely go through, like, I'll buy everything that's under 10 cents for my character just so I have appearance options at PUBG. And, I never see my character. It's another first-person game in that, but I guess when I'm finally shot at the end of the game, I'm like, hey, I look good, when I'm there on the ground with this hat on. But
Fortnite has some fun ones.
Fortnite is great, and I love that Fortnite has,
from a customization point of view.
Yeah. But they're not shooting for that hyper realistic style.
So they're able to relax.
They
a
go
bit
nuts,
more.
and they do a lot more with that. They've got some great things, and I love to see them on that role of like even monthly content. So I think it's something that you'll see at Gearbox. Randy said it right, but man, so many of us here love that idea and want to go deeper there. So I think it's something that will definitely grow over time.
Awesome. Hey, thank you guys so much for your call, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to you again sometime.
Okay, thank you for your time, sir.
Yeah, cheers, and stay warm up there in Illinois, in the suburbs of Chicago, and I appreciate you calling me sir, but you know what? My dad is sir. You can just call me Randy.
Unless you're knighted, and then you are sir. Randy.
Oh yeah, I'm not
different, right?
I haven't been knighted yet.
Yeah, right. Implied yet.
Right. Thanks, you guys. Talk to you later. Cheers.
We've got that medieval time sword in the office from our company outing there a few years ago.
Get an unofficial knighting.
Yeah, we could do that sometime. That would be interesting.
I think I have been knighted at medieval times.
Oh, have you? Okay,
I have
okay.
Yeah, I have.
So when we're at medieval times, we refer to you as Sir Randy.
So I don't know if you guys are familiar. There's this business called Medieval Times. There's probably a half dozen of them or so or more in the United States in different large cities, and it's a castle, and you go there, and inside they have a jousting arena, and you eat like chicken with your fingers, and ribs and potatoes with your fingers,
and soup
I think you just slurp it out of the cup. And you watch these gladiators or these knights beat the crap out of each other with swords, and they joust on horses, and they're swinging flails, and so every once in a while Gearbox will take the whole company down there.
Yeah,
we love it. It's ridiculous. We love it. In fact, one of the knights, the old Green Knight, is one of our motion capture actors.
We bring him in and we put him in the motion capture suit with all the dots on it. Hit my mic. But yeah, he rolls around on the mat and does motion capture for Sun. So
he's really good too. Yeah, he's one of the motion capture actors. Hey, let's talk to. I'm going to take a call from Rachel. Has some questions relating to both Borderlands and Battleborn.
Oh,
so let's see if we can get Rachel on the line. Hey, Rachel, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, Rachel.
How's everyone?
We're doing good. So you're on the air live on the Nerdvana Live podcast with Randy and Randy. Ooh. And where are you calling from?
Shreveport, Louisiana.
Oh, right on. I love Louisiana. I haven't really spent a whole lot of time in Shreveport. I think I went there once because you guys have the casinos, right?
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think I was there once for some gig that happened down there.
You drive right through it.
Yeah, right. So, what do you want to talk about?
We're also getting that big I-49.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, what do you want to talk about today, Rachel?
All right. I do kind of want to start off with saying, like, just because of the last caller made me all sentimental.
Oh.
Because when the first Borderlands came out, I was 13 or 14.
Oh, nice.
And that was like really my first real big gaming. Like, I mean, I've been gaming my whole life, but like I actually played that game with my brother and my dad.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's so
and
awesome.
It was just kind of like it was a very important game for me and my family.
That's awesome.
Even now, me and my dad always talk about it. And before my brother went to the military after we graduated high school, we worked our butt off to defeat Cromarax and all that stuff.
That's awesome. Did you get him? Did you get
no.
him? Oh, you never got him. No. He's tough, man. You gotta get the right gear.
And then like about the time that happened, you guys announced Borderlands 2, so I was like, oh, well, my attention's shifted entirely.
Yeah.
The son of Cromarax, right?
Yeah, son of Cromarax is in Borderlands 2. Yeah.
Yeah, which was brilliant. I just wanted to, it's like, thank you, God, for Borderlands. Thank you, guys.
That's so awesome. Wow. Well, that's why we fight, frankly. Like the idea of families playing games together, that's underscores our commitment to co-op gaming. And oh man, you just made my day.
And we would just sit next. That was a big thing. Is like I really loved being able to like sit next to my brother, like 5, maybe 3 feet away from the TV on our giant flat screen, playing Borderlands in the living room.
You've got to be able to SWAT, right?
That's so awesome.
But you never know.
That's so awesome.
But all right, I just wanted to, I love Borderlands.
Wow, thank you so much.
But Gearbox games are very important to me, so it's just everything you guys make, I love. You guys only get better and better.
Thank you.
Each game you come out with takes all the wonderful things from the last game you made, and then does that times 100.
Well, we're just getting started. I can't wait to see the things that we're working on.
That's why
I
get excited about every new thing you guys put out, because I'm like, oh god, this is going to be even better than the last one.
Right on.
Like, what are they going to do now?
I'm blushing. I'm blushing.
Well, it's just I just enjoy your games so much, and they're so different from a lot of the other options out there. And I like to think, because of the boldness of your games, that we're getting games like Fortnite or other games that are more tongue-in-cheek, and they're serious games, but they don't take themselves so seriously. And I just feel like, I don't know if it's specifically Borderlands that caused this, but I just feel like things changed. What people want in games changed.
We feel it too, and I don't think. I mean, at the risk of sounding like I've got delusions of grandeur, I think, and it isn't just Borderlands. Lots of games affect lots of things, but I think sometimes there are games that can have an impact on the larger culture, and we can feel it. I've had filmmakers tell me. And the kinds of films that you've probably seen some of them that I might be talking about here. I don't want to name names, but I've had filmmakers tell me that our game influenced them. And you mentioned Fortnite. I remember, gosh, about 5 years ago when Epic invited me out when they were like in the earliest prototype phases of that game, and they told me straight up that they had a lot of goals, and free-to-play was definitely one of the goals, but that a lot of the style and a lot of the attitude and the whole idea of looting was inspired by Borderlands. And that meant a lot to me. And it also meant a lot that they invited me in to participate in their process to some degree. So I kept being invited out at periodic points in the development of their game. And I always was able to tell them sincerely how awesome I thought what they were doing was, and how glad I was that they were taking that risk, because their game was risky and they weren't sure. Like, even up to the point, and it always is whenever we make stuff that's creative, it's always scary when we take big creative risks and we don't know how it's going to work out. Fortunately, they're being very successful right now with their battle royale mode, and I think they're feeling very good about all the effort that they spent over the years to get to where they are with Fortnite. Yeah. But it's really fun to feel like you've had an influence on people, and it's fun to be influenced too. I will say it's a big loop. We had lots of influences, from the gameplay being a desire to kind of mix the moment-to-moment fun of a first-person shooter with those things that we found engaging with role-playing games that had no moment-to-moment action that we'd brought into Borderlands, to like stylistically, and we even pay homage to some things. There was this really awesome short that we found called Code Hunters, which had a art style that was pretty extreme, not quite like Borderlands, but definitely influenced us a lot. And we paid homage. We did the Easter egg with the welcome sign at the beginning of our game, and they had the welcome sign and Code Hunters. And we have all kinds of Easter eggs. You can find in Borderlands 2 an entire Minecraft section. That
was awesome.
That was blessed by Notch. He loved Borderlands, and he's like, "Hey, dude, go for it, have fun, man." And he gave us the rights to do that. And so we love, and there's tons of Easter eggs all through, paying homage to all the folks that influenced us. And so it's fun to see us influencing other people. Somebody sent me a picture when Grand Theft Auto came out of a claptrap trash can that was hidden in Grand Theft Auto.
That's awesome.
In Grand Theft Auto
in
5. Yeah. There's some references in the Guerrilla Games game that just won some awards at the Academy.
Yes.
Horizon Zero Dawn, there's some references that are in there.
Wow.
There are some references in Diablo 3.
Yeah.
And others.
Torchlight had some, and there were 2 or 3. So that was.
God, I love Torchlight.
Oh, those guys! I'm
sad
so
about
I
you're in a
know.
game.
I can't believe, but you know what? Hopefully, there's a lot of talent there, and the talent. I know some of them, and they're built to be game makers. They're going to end up making other stuff.
Yeah, they're gonna do something else.
Some people are gonna come from that experience and move on to other things, and those other things will lead to new content that we'll all get to enjoy. It's a sad end, but you know. The world is what it is, and the market judges us sometimes cruelly.
Yeah.
So yeah. So hey, what did you want to talk about, Rachel? I feel like you've just been making us feel good.
Well, I mean, I want you to feel good because
That's great.
you guys kind of deserve the accolades.
Wow.
You know, it may sound like another fangirl, but it's true. I mean, your games like inspired me.
Oh,
you know, and
wow.
I always tell people that a Gearbox game is like a bunch of friends got together and made something great. You know, that's what it always feels like. It feels like a bunch of friends got together and just started shooting the shit.
I'll tell you
and
what.
then they made a game.
It feels really good that you say that, because I think a lot of us feel like our company is as much a family as a company, you know, and I certainly feel that way. And I'm so grateful for the cool people I get to work with. And sometimes some of the, like when we're in our writers' room sessions with Randy, like we just go off, and that's sometimes where some of the best stuff comes out. And we're just, like you said, a bunch of friends hanging out, trying to have fun.
Those are high points.
Yeah,
those are high points. Those are great.
Did you have a question or something?
We're gonna start with.
Okay.
We're gonna start with more of a gameplay question. Like I have two Battleborn questions, but one of them's not really exactly Battleborn. It's more of you guys as game developers, how would you think this would be handled? But currently, I am designing a character for my portfolio, of course, and she's a bard. But I've been trying to picture her as like a bard class. I would define her as a bard kind of situation. And I just kind of, I remember a few years ago, it was a long time ago, when World of Warcraft did that April Fool's thing, and they had the Bard class, and, how would you guys do the Bard? Like, in a Battleborn or Borderlands setting, like, how do you think, that could function? Like,
I'll let you start, Randy.
Is it hard or something? Because it's not really been something I've seen truly implemented much in RPGs, is a bard class.
But when you move to a game that has an action component, right, it's always weird to try to imagine, because traditionally your bards, in RPGs are musicians or poets, they're storytellers. And I'm an old classic EverQuest fan, and I only played a bard. In fact, the name I still go by on Twitter, Jithri, was my bard character in EverQuest. So I've got a soft spot in my heart for bards. In EverQuest, it was weird, right? Because I have a song that damages stuff, and you're playing your little lute or guitar or whatever, and the enemy glows red and takes a few points of damage. And I've seen some other games try that, and I think that's like the crux of what you have to sort out there is, what does it look like for a bard to be involved in your game's main loop? If your main loop doesn't involve combat, I think you've got some options. But if you have to do combat, so bards often, like you go to traditional D&D, bard is like half of everything, or it's like a third of everything. It's, a little bit of like mage damage, a little bit of healing magic, a little bit of thievery, a little bit of fighting. They really are like the center dot on your Venn diagram of classes. So for you on in a character, well, I would say, with a bard, you want to, if you're putting it in a game, and that may be the thing you think about first. You're making a character for a specific game. Then you have to think about, in that game world, to play that game's action loop, what is notable about your bard that does that? Like, if you're putting a bard in Borderlands, oh my gosh, You know, I almost go immediately to like Fury Road to the guy on the truck with the electric guitar sitting up there. You know, it's like is you go like full on.
Here's
campy.
what I would do. Here's what I would do. I would go if I was doing it in Borderlands. All right. I would think about it from a skill tree point of view, and I would think about the genres of music.
Okay.
And I would associate them with each skill tree. And then I would associate the genre with a function. So like I'd have one of them be really heavily co-op, right? Where the songs I'm playing are affecting the team buffs or the team
And it's like
defense.
boy band pop, right?
Yeah, maybe. That's funny. But I'd pick one I'd pick one that goes in that direction. And then I'd pick another one that's maybe more environmental. But the thing is like the bard, if you're gonna derive power from the music, it's all gotta be kind of aura-like. It's all gotta be you're not going to have, although maybe one of the things you can do is have a throw out, and the throw out's where the music comes from, and it's the radius of the throw out object, right? So like you're throwing out like a song grenade basically, or a song turret. You know, and you can have one that's maybe radius. You can have one that's cone. The music goes out in a cone. Anything within that cone is being affected by it. So, like, imagine a turret that's shooting a music cone, and
it's like a speaker gun. Or
And any of the bad guys within it, they just stop and they just start, they start rocking out. They don't even, they drop their guns.
Subwoofer would be the name of this bard's dog. By the way.
Yes, subwoofer. That's so great. Oh my God, this is why you are Varnell. Oh,
the bad puns.
Oh God! Now I want to make this character subwoofer. He's a pet class with subwoofer.
The tweet.
yeah. And then the action skill, I'd have to light it up. There'd be legit music that has to come out, and the guy has to scream it out or sing it out, or the girl, or whatever the character is.
Yeah,
and
I think your fun thing there is that you go with that and think about how your instruments or your the thing that makes the noises visualized. If you're working on like models and concept art, I think you always want to find that right mix between it looks like something that it's not so far out that you can't interpret it out of real life, but it doesn't look like everything that you would just go down to like Sam Ash or a music store or something like that and buy off the shelf. So find that cool twist on the visuals on an instrument. Like I recognize that's great, and it's maybe not like I'm a big Futurama fan, and I think they play the holophone, and is that the name of the thing, the sax that he plays, and it's a completely made up instrument that he plays holograms out of this thing, and it's totally it works for Futurama because they build a whole episode around it, but you want to find that relatability in the character. But the music, using the music and using it for like aura based stuff would be cool.
Yeah.
If you're doing the full design on it, you really would want to think about the style of music and the loop and how that coalesces.
But imagine your skill tree and the skills you invest in actually change what song happens.
It's like, are you heavy metal for damage? Are you new age for healing? Or you go to that. Are you jazz for for like dexterity or something? I don't know what the jazz would do. Jazz for just being cool. It's like discounts at the shop. I don't know what you get with jazz.
That's such a fun design problem, Rachel. I bet that comes up again.
We go another hour on it.
Hey, Rachel, I want to think.
I was thinking.
Go ahead. You do it.
Like from a Battleborn standpoint, because of y'all's the Helix tree that you have. I was thinking that if for a potential bard character, that what you would do is because I'm trying to also think of this from like a game mechanics, how does it function and does it actually work? But you'd have the two, the left and right tree, all right, and then you have the middle tree, which is the mutation. But each tree would be like a song, so it'd be like two songs, and then the player, as they're playing this character, whatever they look like or whatever they are, this bard, they remix the song while they're advancing their helix tree.
Yeah, you could totally do that. In fact, there's some games that have played with that idea where there's kind of a throughput rhythm, and you can toggle on and off different instruments. There's been lots of digital entertainment that have done this over the years, where the instrument or the rhythm line is chosen by the player, and imagine if you have mutually exclusive options, but they all work within the same rhythm line. So left, right goes all the way down to build your song, and your song's basically unique.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. Hey, Rachel.
Yeah, that's what I would see doing.
That's awesome. That sounds like a good idea. I'd like you to explore that. Hey, Rachel, it's been super awesome talking to you. We're almost out of time for our show, and I have another caller on the line that's been waiting for a while that I'd love to chat with before we have to get off. But I'd love to, if you want to call back again, we'll be back. So thank you so much for calling. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Oh, it was a pleasure talking to you guys, too.
Awesome.
Sorry for taking up all the air.
No, it was great. It was so awesome chatting with you. I loved every minute of it. Thank you so much, Rachel. We'll talk to you later. Cheers.
All right, bye.
Bye.
All right, I'm gonna squeeze in John, and then we'll wrap it. We'll see if we can do this one quickly.
Wow, time flies.
Hey,
hello.
Hey, John, you can hear me, right?
I can.
You're on the air with Randy and Randy. Where are you calling from, John?
Hello, I'm calling from New York City.
Awesome. Thanks for calling from New York, John. How's the weather up there? You holding the fort? You guys
It's
okay?
freezing cold.
Yeah.
It's windy and cold and miserable.
I heard it's like really bad conditions up there right now.
Man, it's so cold in Texas
No, it's
today.
awful.
It's like
67 degrees here.
Terrible. I had to use a blanket for a little bit last night.
Oh, that's cruel, man. They're like,
Well,
there's people suffering up there.
The thing about the thing about cold, rainy weather here is people like to abandon their umbrellas when they inevitably break under the strain of the wind.
Where's my umbrella?
So it looks like
I have an umbrella somewhere. Where'd
it
I put
looks
it?
like
you got to hand
umbrella war happened all over the street.
Speaking of umbrella war, I'm going to show you because it was raining earlier, so I brought my umbrella. Check, this is my umbrella. If you can see on the stream, it looks like a katana. It's got a katana blade, and
oh wow,
yeah, and but this is an umbrella, so I can wield this bad boy literally. And yeah, I'm good to go. Hey, listen, John, we're almost out of time, but I didn't want to stop the show without taking your call. So what's on your mind? What can we talk to you about?
Awesome. So I wanted to talk about, I may get some flack for this, but I actually thought Duke Nukem Forever was possibly the best Duke Nukem, in my opinion. And I really do think that because it played like, it was really interesting to just see this stereotype being put in different situations and reacting in different ways. And I just enjoyed the gunplay, and I bonded with friends playing over the online mode on PC back in 2011. And I was wondering, I'm sure you can't say much, but any future for the IP, any kind of words of well wishes for Duke and his future would be great to hear.
Awesome. Well, I'll tell you, I feel like in some ways I owe Duke my career. You know, Duke Nukem 3D was the first commercial product I worked on. And I moved out to Texas to join the Duke Nukem team and be part of that effort working in that era. Obviously, I left 3D Realms and we built Gearbox Software while they were working on Duke Nukem Forever. But I'll tell you, I had some of the same feelings, and I'll pass your thoughts along to Alan Bloom, who is he created Duke. He's been with it from the very beginning, and he spent more time with Duke than any single living person alive. And
if you could get Megadeth to do the soundtrack, that would complete my life.
Yeah, I don't know if those guys are still recording, but they did do one. They did do one take on Grab Bag.
They did do one,
yeah, and that was pretty cool. Yeah, and we're still working with Lee Jackson, and he contributed some new music to the anniversary edition of Duke 3D, and he actually gave us he's working on some new tracks for us for some things. But listen, I did not help those guys get to the finish line with Forever and acquire the property just so that Forever could come out. I believe there is a future for Duke, and he's one of the most famous video game characters, period.
And the trailer for Ready Player One.
Yeah, he's in Ready Player One.
Yeah.
So there's one thing you can see Duke Nukem in Ready Player One when it comes out this summer, and or is it when is it coming out? It's actually soon. It's actually at the end of March, right? Yeah. So check out. You'll find.
That's John Cena, right?
No, that's a different rumor. So we are in talks with we're in talks with the studio to make a Duke Nukem motion picture. And that's unfolding, and we'll obviously have some more news about that as that works out. And I do see a future of great video games for Duke. Now we have a hard problem. We have to figure out what the next Duke Nukem game is, but and it's challenging to do that because I think it's really important that the next Duke Nukem game is amazing and also does something a bit revolutionary that lets Duke be as important as we know the character can be. And I think the character's got to evolve and the gameplay's got to evolve. The gameplay should bring something new to the table. But it should also remember where it came from and deliver on what makes past Duke Nukem games great as well. So those are some really big shoes to fill, and we've been working on that from a conceptual point of view for a while, and I've had different studios pitch me all kinds of concepts, and there'll be some action. There'll be some action. This is not the end of Duke's story by any means. So I hope.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear.
Awesome.
And then I agree that it needs to evolve a little bit. You know, it doesn't need to completely be something totally new, but the fact that Forever went with a kind of Half-Life-esque adventure feel was something really refreshing. I was expecting, something like another Duke Nukem 3D. That's what I was expecting, and I was actually pleasantly surprised that it wasn't all that. It was a little bit more.
Yeah.
So
and it's kind of bittersweet to me. There's a lot of folks that, because it had 15 years of being hyped and being promised as being the greatest game ever
it could
made.
never live up to it. Never. I don't care if you put $1 million in each game box.
Yeah. A lot of folks were really looking forward to the opportunity to judge it harshly. I did not have objective eyes when I saw it. I mean, because I know something about the story of how that game was made, and to me, I thought it was great. But I understand that everyone's got their own opinions, and that it seemed to have not lived up to expectations that were created, which makes sense given how high those expectations were.
It couldn't.
Yeah.
It couldn't.
But I think one of my jobs is that I have to make sure that the next time Duke appears, that it exceeds the expectations people have for it, and that's a difficult challenge.
Amen. I wish you the best.
That's a difficult challenge, but that's one of my jobs that I'm going to have to tackle. But hey, thank you so much for calling, John, and asking about Duke. Duke's an important character for me and for Gearbox, and you'll definitely see some different kinds of small action, like licensing, like when Duke appears in movies and other cameos and other products, but also some video game stuff, and then eventually a big Duke Nukem video game, which is what I think those of us that like the character and like the gameplay are looking forward to.
Well, that's great to hear. Thank you so much. Good luck.
Cool.
Give him all your love.
We'll do the best we can. I think the person that could love Duke the most is Duke.
That's probably
no one could love Duke as much as Duke loves Duke.
I know so a lot of people who love Duke.
Great. Me too, man. Well, it's great. It's so great to hear from you, John. Thanks for calling. And
right.
I'm going to say goodbye and feel free to call back some other time, and I'm going to let you go now. And Randy, I think that's our show, man. Wow. I think we did it. Time just blew right by, right?
Through. Yeah.
It's really, and you know what? I think there's a couple people that have been sitting on Discord. I'm very sorry, guys. We're out of time for the show, but feel free to call in some other time. Remember, if you call in the phone number, you tend to have preferential treatment. And thanks for joining us. We didn't even get to one of our other topics. We're going to talk about violence in video games has come up again. We're going to talk. Maybe we can defer that till next week, or maybe it'll all blow. Maybe it'll all blow over by then. We don't even need to tackle it.
Blow up, either way.
Yeah. But hey, thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Nerdvana Live podcast. I'm sure I will be back at some point. I'm sure Randy will be back at some point, and Nerdvana Live will be back 1 week from today. Cheers.